Continuing from our previous discussion, if these polygamy verses were really about helping orphans, Islam could have addressed it differently. Build funds, assign guardians. Why have a verse that gives men an excuse to exploit it?
Good point, but in saying that you are assuming the world back then worked the same way as it does today. At the time, Arabia was organized by tribes. There were no institutions, no police, no courts, and no welfare systems. If a man died, his wife didn't automatically stay protected. She could lose her shelter, since homes and tents were considered part of the husband's clan property. She could lose her income, as men handled trade and camel herding. She also didn't have inheritance rights. In other words, she wasn't the owner. She was the dependent occupant and had no contractual or legal claim.
When war left many widows and orphans, Islam didn't yet have a bureaucratic mechanism, like funds, etc. you mentioned, to manage care.
But Islam had social institution of marriage, which was legally recognized and had the ability to create binding responsibility.
So the polygamy allowance wasn't a moral ideal, it was a pragmatic emergency measure. It used an existing cultural framework to protect rather than exploit, and restricted it with the condition of justice.
It could have then just asked men to give charity and take care of orphans instead of allowing them to marry 4 wives.
That is exactly how the verses are approaching, as we discussed in our last conversation.
They start off by stressing on taking care of orphans and stressing on not eating up their wealth. And only if it helps in raising them better, you can marry up to 4 wives.
While making sure you can do justice among them, but if you can't, then marry only 1.
In that society, taking care informally wasn't binding, while marriage was a binding contract. And the whole framework is coming from a view of discouragement. From having unlimited wives to a limit of 4, and from no accountability to have justice and fairness.
Going back to my question again, why didn't Islam deal with this problem by building a social welfare system?
It certainly did, but social transformation takes time. Until those reforms took root, polygamy functioned as an interim safety net.
Islam introduced inheritance rights for women in chapter 4, verses 7 to 12.
This was revolutionary at the time, not just in Arabia, but across the world, where women didn't get anything in inheritance.
It also introduced a system of charity and zakat in chapter 9, verse 60.
Okay, eventually when the social system of care was built, then why it didn't ban polygamy altogether?
Islam builds laws that can apply to all eras and regions. A total ban would make sense in a modern welfare state. But Islam's laws claim to be revealed for the entire world and all times. Even in today's world, there are more countries that lack basic welfare system than countries that have one. So the Quran keeps polygamy as a regulated emergency mechanism, not a societal norm.
It's like a fire extinguisher. You don't use it casually, but you don't remove it from the building either.
I must say, you have an interesting way to look at things, but we can agree to disagree.
I have a lot more questions on this topic, but let's leave it there for today until we meet next time.